This is a movement for Jesus, and it's a daily occurrence.
It still goes.
You're having conversations about Jesus with people who you're not sure. There's no easy way to get into it. You just ask them a question. That's what Jesus did. He asked 3 times more questions than he was asked. And you get into things that matter. And it's amazing how people are ready to share where they're at. My treasure hunt Thursday. So the group left me. I'm finding all this stuff, which I didn't conceal it. When I came up, and because I noticed they were all around their vehicles, and I said, look, I just found 3 buttons, and, I found a couple of wheat pennies, and they're like, no, we going somewhere else, which is a treasure hunt temptation. You always think that somewhere over the rainbow there's the promised land, and I was like, well, I'm staying right here.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay. And so hours later, I'm way away from where I parked my truck. I'm in my own little world. I'm finding stuff, and I just looked up, and there's a guy, kind of scruffy looking, standing right in front of me in the middle of this field, half a mile from my truck. So I looked at my truck way off in the distance, and his truck is beside my truck. But I have earphones on, so, I didn't realize he was, but it scared me. And so you know what I do when I get scared?
Confront.
And I said, what's your story? That's a Phil line.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got one.
And he didn't say much. He kind of mumbled something, and I said, if a man will walk half a mile, he bound to have a reason.
He's got to have something to say.
And he said, well, I know your daughter. He said, out at Camp Gioka. So I said, well, that was my next question. I said, are you a follower of Jesus? Well, he just looked at me. And I said, the hesitation is answering my question.
Yep.
And he said, well, I was going to say I'm kind of on the fence, but I've heard a preacher say that if you're on the fence, you're in the devil's pasture because there's no fence. He started preaching his own sermon.
And answering his own question.
What's funny is I only asked about 5 questions, and he did all the talking.
Yeah.
But it was more like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying. And I was like, well, what do you mean, what are you trying? What are you doing? He's like shaking his head. So I said, look, it's obvious the Lord sent you out here because you have no reason for being here.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I live here, and I thought that was you, and I just wanted to come see. And I was like, well, why didn't you just turn around and leave when you got confirmation? This is the way this conversation went. And so I just gave an overview of the book of John. I said, do you have a Bible? He said, yes, sir. Then he started saying, sir, which I thought, okay, we've changed the dynamic here. I said, you need to go home and read that and figure out who Jesus is for yourself and go all in.
Right.
Because what's crazy about this is usually you're all in or you're all out. The stuff in between, we justify, we rationalize. I said, all I did was ask you 3 questions, and you didn't have a very good answer.
Yeah.
And, I was equating that to when we stand before God, you should probably be able to articulate your position and view of the Son of God.
Yeah, where you are.
Yeah. And so he said, I'm going to do that.
Which one of the camera guys named Hunter, he's been with us, I think, like 8 years. And we were talking about doing these dad stories in the blind and talking about how that, if you showed up in the blind, of course, first thing Dad would always say, are you a federal game warden? was the first ask. And then it'd be like, same deal. It'd be questions. And he said, yep, the first time I hunted with Mr. Phil, I had my camera, it was obvious he was one of our camera guys. And he said, we weren't 5 minutes in. And he said, well, son, do you know who Jesus is? He said, and then he gave me about a 30-minute gospel presentation. He said, of course, he said, I am a believer. I was. He said, I told you. He said, but I'm making sure.
You know what's funny about that story? I heard him say that in the blind.
Yeah.
Well, the other cameraman
wasn't?
Well, no. When he came and helped us put out the decoys.
Oh, okay.
And so he was riding with me in my amphibious vehicle.
Yeah.
We're out there on the water. And I looked at him.
The young kid. The
young.
Yeah.
And I
Willie calls him the intern. He's classic dad.
I looked at him, and then in that moment, I realized I don't know who this is. I've never seen this guy before.
Right, he's brand new.
But we're way into the process. Like, I didn't introduce myself. I just assumed he's a cameraman. I probably know him. But the more I looked at him, I thought, I don't know who this is.
He looks like he's about 12.
Yeah, so I said, I got a question for you. And he was like, yes, sir. I mean, he had his camera. I was like, you can put your camera down. This is not for filming. This is for you. I said, how'd you get here? And he said, well, I drove my truck. I said, no, I don't mean that. How did you position yourself in life to be sitting next to me? Because I just realized, I don't think I know you, do I? He said, no, sir. And he said, well, I sent an email to Duck Commander asking if there was any job openings, and they accepted it. I was like, well, where are you from? He said, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I was like, oh. I said, well, I got a question for you. And he said, what's that? I said, what is your standing with the Lord God Almighty?
Let's cut to the chase, Jack.
Yeah. And he said, I would say good. He said, that's why I'm here, because I thought I would like to be mentored by doing something I love to do, which is the outdoors and filming by godly men. I said, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
I said, I think we're going to get along just fine.
Well, what a morning for him. I think his name is Drew.
Well, it was funny because I thought he might say something.
Yeah.
Of course, I said, now, what college did you go to? And he said, oh, I hadn't even graduated high school.
He looks very young. I was like, man.
You're in high school? He said, well, technically I'm done. He said, but I just got done. And I was like, oh, man. I was like, well, I knew you look young, but I just assumed.
He is young.
Yeah.
And Willie was just calling him the intern, Zach. You know, he hadn't even given him a name yet. I guess he's waiting to see if he hangs around long enough. I asked him his name and actually remembered it. But I did say
that'll become his name. He'll just be the intern.
Oh, he will. For Willie,
forever.
he will be the intern forever.
Well, my whole point for telling that story, though, and going to, I mean, your lesson, what it really did, is it showed you this is a movement.
Yeah.
This is a movement for Jesus, and it's a daily occurrence.
It still goes.
You're having conversations about Jesus with people who you're not sure. There's no easy way to get into it. You just ask them a question. That's what Jesus did. He asked 3 times more questions than he was asked. And you get into things that matter. And it's amazing how people are ready to share where they're at. I mean, I just told you 2 different stories. One,